Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about Paul and message. Do you know 2/3 of the Bible is written by Paul and his message is very important. That's why we sending Paul messages. We are sending Paul messages, and I hope every church receive this message. So because of technology, you don't need to go and knock at every church door and say, oh, this is the message. Just we go live with streaming and everybody can receive this message. So today I want to give you message. My intention is serving and my intention is sending the message of Paul. So through my life experiences, I have experienced. Through my life experiences, I learned to be content. My model was not Paul, but life gave me a lot of lessons. I learned life lessons through half a century. I lived more than half a century, and I reached a certain age that I can say that I have a lot of experience and I'm professional. Okay, if you join me in Facebook right now, I'm talking about Paul and message. I told you that I learned my lesson. One of the lesson that I learned in life is I I learned to be content in any situation. I learned. So with half a century experience, I learned to be content in any situation. So Paul learned this lesson too. And in this book that I'm going to use it, Paul modeled by his message, chapter 13 is learning the secret of being content. There is a secret, and you should know this secret. If you meet someone who claim like me that I learned to be content, you may be cynical, you may be not accept me, as I said, but I can prove it to you. I can prove it to you that I learned to be content. From my teenage, I told this so many times. From my teenager time, there was my motto that I have to learn and learn and learn and learn. Sometimes something that you learn is wrong. Yes, you have to relearn this. When you learn the wrong thing, when they brainwash you and you think you are getting right information, but the thing that you learn is wrong, so you have to replace them with the true gospel of Jesus Christ. So there is a lot of hypocrisy creeping into the church. There is a lot of false information sending to the churches every day. There is a lot of information sending from churches to the world every day that is false. Not to mention the mega churches. They sending wrong information to the church. Do I need to name it? John MacArthur, Joyce Meyer. They are sending wrong information to the congregation. No, men and women doesn't make any difference. They are sending wrong information, false teaching to the congregation. That's why From the first, I investigate and I want to give you true gospel. I learned through these years that I'm a believer. I'm a believer more, almost, not more than, almost 20 years. And I learned true gospel of Jesus Christ, and I learned how to be content. When I look back in my life, I see a lot of hardship. I see a lot of lesson. I see a lot of blessing in disguise. So let's continue with the book. In Philippians 4:12, Paul said, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. In fact, he repeats the claim twice. So I claim twice as well as Paul. I be content in any and every situation. In Paul, it was a secret he had to learn, and therefore a secret we too may learn. So let me teach you a secret. You have to learn this secret, how to be content in any and every situation. The letter to the Philippians presents something of a paradox on first reading. When you first read, oh, it doesn't make sense. But if you read it twice and third time, it makes sense. In 2 Timothy 1:16 and 17, may the Lord show mercy to the household of Onesiphorus, because he often refreshed me and was not ashamed of my chain. On the contrary, when he was in Rome, he searched hard for me until he found me. See, this is love. This is love I'm talking about. And this is the contentment. Paul was in chain. Paul, I'm free. Fortunately, I'm not in chain. Fortunately, I'm not in chain. But Paul was in chain. And in chain, he was content. Do you see that? Do you see this fact? Learn the secret of being content. Even if you are in chain, be content. But I'm telling you, don't believe in chain. You don't need to be in chain. As Second Timothy said that Paul was in chain. But you don't need to. There are different opinions about the location of Paul's imprisonment. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what prison Paul was. The important thing is he learned to be content even in the chain. So there is a circumstances of Paul's arrest. When Paul returned from his third missionary journey, he called it on the church in Jerusalem on his way on Antioch, where he was warned that there was thousands of Jewish believers who had remained zealous for the law and who had been informed that Paul was encouraging people to turn away from the law of Moses. See, Paul was returning. So if you ask me when I return, I don't return, because if I return, I get arrested. So I never return. And then the elders advised Paul that As they had 4 men who were taking a vow, he should join in their purification rites, pay their expenses, and in so doing demonstrate that he was not against Moses and was remorse. So many today in the church, they follow law of Moses. They follow law of Moses and they want to be supervisor as in the Egypt. I know in the church there is supervisor that they try hard to control and they slave other people. They want to use other people, they want to be supervised on people. That's why I'm telling you, don't continue these things. And toward the end of the 7 days, however, he was seen in the temple by some people who supposed he had through his Gentile friend. So I was preaching in a church, and some people saw me in the church, and they said, "Oh, there is activity," and they want to arrest me from that. They attack me all the time. I posted a picture today in the Facebook and how they try hard to defeat me. They try they hard. They try to suffocate me. They try to hate me. They try to any things that they could. But I was born a winner. I was born a winner. You cannot keep me quiet because I'm sending true gospel message. And the follower of law of Moses said to say such a thing, they didn't like activity they saw. They saw an activity and they didn't like it. They get upset and said, "Oh, it's forbidden to say and show this activity." But Festus then made arrangement for Paul to be taken to Rome, a journey of many months. The prisoner would sail initially in rough seas. The next 14 days, it drifted damaged and out of control until it finally came to breathe in Adriatic Sea when the sailor ran the ship onto the sandbank. Sometimes the ship is out of control, and you see that sometimes goes and things get out of control. They try to control, and they are frightened. Oh, somebody doing something that it get out of control. They try to control me in any way possible. The ship was out of control. They manipulate and they set everything. They act like a jerk that they could control me, but they couldn't. But to land, but if you want to learn the secret, you have to learn to rejoice in tribulation. Rejoice even in tribulation. If you want to rejoice, then rejoice in tribulation. But when Paul sent a letter to Philippians, everybody everybody expected to be receiving a letter from angry man. As they said, "Oh, you are angry." But I'm not angry. Although I passed through a lot of hardship, I passed through a lot of manipulation, I passed through a lot of hypocrisy, but I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I am not. I am not angry. I'm just telling you the true gospel of Jesus Christ. After all, it was not the enemy of the gospel who put him there. That might have been quite easy to come to terms with. But the whole fiasco had begun with gossip among believers in Jerusalem who had misunderstood his attitude to law, who should have known better, and who created the circumstances for his arrest. So, as like Paul, Paul was sentenced by believers, not unbelievers. The elder of the church riot against him and they get him arrested. Today, again, the gossiper, they gossip against me, the believer gossip against me, and they should have known better than this. I'm against the law. I'm against the law of Moses, which is broadcast from TV ministry. I'm against the law of Moses. That's why you are against me, because I tell the truth. But I'm content in any and every situation. Now, learning the secret. What is that secret? Paul suggests to Philippians two aspects to this. First, he talks about how to survive internally, that is, in the inner world of his mind and heart. And secondly, he talks about how to survive externally, that is, in the actual circumstances designed from every human perspective to be so troublesome to him. Okay, so there was two, internally and externally. How to survive internally, Philippians 4:4-7. The most important thing about any of us is not so much what is happening to us. We pass through a lot of events, a lot of happening in our life. Sometimes we say, what just happened? And we don't know what just happened. But we have to pass through that. We have to learn our lesson and pass that. That's why. That's why I'm telling you, I have learned during the years I might believe. I learned through different churches, not from false teacher, because they didn't any means to teach me anything of the gospel. They teach me wrong things. When you learn the wrong things, yes, there is a something in Farsi language. And there was a wise man, and they asked him, "How do you come up with this? How do you learn this?" And he said that I saw this wrong behavior, and I said, "I'm not gonna do this." Right? There is something that you can learn when you see, even children. Remember, when a child is from divorced family, and he or she see a lot of hatred in the family, boy or girl, doesn't matter. When she or he grown up, he or she tell himself or herself that I'm not gonna be like this. He or she learned that. Oh, I'm not gonna be like my parents, because she saw that in first hand there is a lot of hatred in the family, there is a lot of fight in the family. So he or she said, oh, I'm not gonna be like that. So there is something you learn when you see something wrong. You said, this is wrong, so I'm not gonna do that. You learn how to behave in right way by observing the wrong thing. Okay, so that's internally and externally. The most important thing about any of us is not so much what's happening to us as what is happening in us. Paul gives a simple formula to help us through the traumas of a troubled heart and inner life. Philippians 4 6 and 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything be in everything by praying and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind in Christ Jesus. You don't need calendar to be peacing God. You don't need anything around you. There is internal. You have to peace internally. You have to have peace internally. So this is the word of God. If somebody said this is not for you, you can say, go to hell. I don't care what you say or what you think. I don't care what you think or what you say. I don't care that. So because word of God, true gospel of Jesus Christ said, do not be anxious about anything. So I'm not anxious. Why should I? I'm not anxious. This sounds great, of course, but seems completely unreasonable. It doesn't make sense. How can I be not anxious when there is a lot of things happening around me? When people acting like jerk, how can I be anxious about that? But there is a secret here. There is a secret hidden here. How can we, in the real world, with all its possible trials and traumas, not to be anxious about anything? It almost sounds a neglect of responsibility. Sometimes people don't understand this. They think that if they say, oh, we are not responsible for anything, then they are not anxious. And somebody who is responsible, so they should worry about food. No, you shouldn't worry about food, but accept the responsibility. That is the true gospel of Jesus Christ. Don't be anxious about food, don't care about food, but accept your responsibility. Paul tells us that what to do with our anxieties. For have them we certainly will. In any situation that would normally create anxiety, present it to God with thanksgiving. Thanks God. I always thanks God. That does not mean we thank God for the situation. Yes, I said in any in some situation, even when I was in internship, I said I hate this situation. You can say that. There is nothing wrong with saying that I hate this situation. You can hate a situation. Why not? But you can thank God in the middle of the situation. Although you hate it, but you thank God. No one said that Paul enjoying being in chain. Paul was suffering from chain, but he thanked God anyway. For there may be many situations about which there is nothing to thank God, but rather we are to thank God in the situation for his complete and utter sufficiency and sovereignty. No matter what is happening, our cause of thanksgiving is not the circumstances that cause thanksgiving. For that would be absurd. God is bigger than circumstances. That's why I learned to be content in any and every situation. A key, a key to inner security and stability in the Christian life is a disposition of thankfulness to God. So, no matter do you have a key or not, I don't care if you have a key or not. The key to happiness is this secret. Believe me, I have the key to this secret and I want to give you the key to secret of happiness. You can be happy in any and every situation like me. To be thankful is to express dependency on the one to whom we are being thankful. The most important thing about any of us is where we place our dependency. Really, where we put our dependency. We put our dependency on a sky. I don't depend on a sky. I don't care if the door of the sky is open or not. I don't care about that because my dependency is not on the sky. My dependency is in God. Where is God? I told you before, God is in my heart. God is in my heart. My dependency is in God Himself, who is in my heart. And I love God. And I prove it so many times that I love God. I proved it. The peace of God that passes understanding is not the peace of the tranquil lake districts in. Maybe you go on vacation to the cottage and you feel peace. I'm not talking about that peace. If you feel cottagey, it's not from God. It's not peace from God. That peace that you go to the lake to go your vacation and you go to cottage and feel peace and quiet, that's not from God. That's not from God. But what about the circumstances themselves? So I talked about internally. Let's talk about the second one, external situation. Paul stresses, I know what is it to be in need. He is not writing a theoretical point, but with the authenticity that only comes from first-hand experience in the tough circumstances of life, where the reality of what he affirmed has been modeled by hard experience, and he wants the Philippians to know that I know. Philippians 4:12. I know what is it to be in need, and I know what is it to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. Exactly, I experienced this. I told you before, I guess I told this 3 years ago. When I was in Iran, my country of birth, I had plenty. I didn't know what to do with my money. Really, I'm not joking. I had a lot of money. I didn't know how to spend my money. I didn't know that. But after immigrating to Canada and facing a lot of hardship, I came to the point that, oh, I didn't have any money at all. I didn't have any money at all. Even sometimes I was hungry. Believe me, I experienced it, two of them. Having plenty, having nothing. That's why I learned to be content in any situation. I was hungry and I was rich, and learned from these situations. Paul, of course, knew. Paul, of course, knew nothing of the technological advantages we take for granted. His voice was never amplified to make it easier for the crowd to hear. He never recorded a cassette tape or made a radio program or TV program. Paul never recorded anything. Believe me, Paul never recorded a program. Never ever. He didn't own a car, of course. He didn't have a boat. But there is a point here. Once he had arrived, Paul didn't go straight to address large waiting crowd. And when, when he had completed his planned series of meetings, move on to the next city that had been prepared for him, leaving behind a follow-up team to place the convert in local churches and instruct them further in the things of God. He often arrived in a city as a stranger and began at the local synagogue until they inevitably kicked him out. Let's see what happened with the Paul. Sometimes he didn't invite it in a city and he went to that city. He talked in synagogue until the elder of the synagogue kicked him out. They said, oh, we don't want activity. We don't want any activity anymore. That was Paul's life. You see, Luke 4:28 and 29. All the people in the synagogue were furious when they heard this. They got up, drove him out of the town, and took him to brow of the hill on which the town was built, in order to throw him down the cliff. And Matthew 27:22 and 23. What shall I do? What shall I do? Then, with Jesus, who is called Christ, Pilate asked. They all answered, crucify him, crucify him. Sometimes we need to learn from first hand experience. When you experience this, first hand experience, I feel it, hardship with my blood and bone and blood, whatever you can call it. I experience it firsthand. I know how does it feel. No, when I talk to people, sometimes because I had a lot of job and I know the atmosphere in that job and job responsibility. I know I didn't work in every job possible. How could I? But I know a lot of different jobs. I had a lot of different jobs. I know how does it feel. When I'm talking to a person, I can feel that person feelings. When somebody feel that he or she is unworthy, I can sympathy with him or her because I felt that way. I know. I was poor, I was rich. I know how does it feel. I know how is it to be rejected. I know how does it feel to be rejected. I know how does it feel to be feel like a failure because sometimes I feel that way. Although I was born a winner, but sometimes I feel like a failure. So I can sympathy with those people. Let me close that with knocked down but never knocked out. Paul writes to the Corinthians, but we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that his life may be revealed in our mortal body. 2 Corinthians 4 7 to 11. So, let me close this with this. Pay attention to this because it's so important. If you are watching me right now, pay attention because it's so important. Let me conclude my secret. Maybe you are rejected. So what? Get a life and go on. As the disciple went city to city and sent the message to cities, and people of the city rejected them. They shake the dust and go to another city. I know how does it feel to be rejected. So go ahead. Forget the past. Go ahead and claim the goodness of God because God is good. Sometimes we need to be content in any situation. Sometimes we are betrayed by our own friends. Sometimes. Sometimes we are betrayed by our own friends. Deal with it. Go ahead. But the secret is no matter what situation you are in, be content and thank God. Peace of God be with you all. Okay, if you join me